away your shiplap. Make sure you throw away those barn doors. Ensure that your farmhouse has been sanitized from all sorts of inclinations towards sodomy, because the couple that has made it famous has gone full sodomite. We're talking on this edition of Irrespective about the full-throated endorsement of LGBTQism and everything, every other sin associated with it by none other than Chip and Joanna Gaines.
Hey,
Welcome.
Chip, Yana wants more gray. Bring in more gray.
That's right. We need more white and black colors.
Bring the gray and the barn doors.
Colors are a non sequitur in this woman's
What do
life
you
for
mean
whatever
we
reason.
ran out of gray? She used it all up? No more gray?
Home Depot, Lowe's, they all ran out. Their paint department, they ran out of gray. Welcome each and every one of you to this new edition of Irrespective. Now, as we've said before, and we are going to let our audience know once again, you have been used to, up until this point, that we do, as it were, Bible studies, in a sense, Wednesdays and Sundays. We were producing a separate podcast called Irrefutable that we would publish on Mondays. And on those episodes, we would tackle topics that were of interest to us personally, of course, always looking at everything through a Christian perspective. But they were not necessarily Bible studies, but rather commentaries on things that were happening in the world of politics, news, pulpits, ecclesiastical matters. And that's what we're doing now in Irrespective on Wednesdays. The Bible studies will be on Sundays, but nevertheless, it's important that we tackle these issues. I know many Christians are not used to the so-called pulpits managing these things. However, we still believe, and we will always believe, because that is what the Bible instructs us, that the gospel has an extension to absolutely everything in life. And therefore, as Paul writes, he tells us that we ought to examine all things and retain that which is good and abstain from every form of evil. Then that requires extending a filter to absolutely everything that we interact with and that wants to interact with us. Therefore, we're going to keep the spirit, as it were, of Irrefutable on Irrespective on Wednesdays. There will be more comedy, as you'll note. There will be more sarcasm than usual, as you'll note, but it's all in the service of making a great point. Therefore, I think it behooves us now to enter into the subject matter at hand.
So could we
Decorating
bring
pillows.
in the Gaines somehow, some way, and join it to the MacArthur passing?
Well,
Maybe a gray, casket.
if you
I'm just saying.
if you'd like to mention something about the MacArthur passing, because I'm more than assured that some people, some Christians will say, do you have anything to say about John MacArthur going on and being with the Lord?
No.
It is said, what has been said has been said. That's the end of that.
No, because at the end of the day, he was way into predestination. So
Absolutely.
he was predestined to go, and I was predestined not to have comments.
Correct. Well, I was predestined to say the following comment about
Now,
all
some
of this.
people will say that we're not being very respectful. They were predestined to think that way.
They were predestined to think
In
that
other
way.
words, they were predestined to be wrong.
But if that's the case, then I was predestined to be right in the following comment, and it is this. Most of these persons whom are demonstrating a lamentation for public consumption.
Why
of
would you
John
lament if supposedly the guy is in heaven?
Say that again?
Why would you lament if the guy supposedly is in heaven?
Well, you should see a lot of the posts going up on X.
Well, that's
over
like the
fact that-
people that when they read Jesus cried over the Lazarus situation, they go, you see how saddened he was? He was sad that his buddy was dead. He was saddened because they were...
Incredulous.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so if John is in heaven, we should be celebrating.
Correct. Well, there were some people, this is why I'm mocking them, because it's obvious that they're looking for some attention. They said they were devastated when they heard the news of John MacArthur's
Why?
passing. And this is my comment on that before we move on to the main subject matter at
But
hand.
this is what upsets me about some forms of Christianity. We talk about heaven, the bliss of heaven, then we have a brother that goes home and we are devastated.
Right. Well,
I'm sorry, but I interrupted your
but part of my comment has to do with exactly that. So they're devastated over a man that they never met, over a man that they heard his sermons probably because of radio or podcasts or what have you. But yet in many instances, Christians don't have that same affection for the pastors that pastor them locally and give them of their time and think upon them, et cetera, et cetera. That is something that angers me about this because, again, it's all of this public performance that is present and not unfeigned faith and sincerity, which should characterize us as Christians in the
So
matter.
Jimmy Swaggart passed. Did he get a proper Louisiana black burial?
With the what is it? Oh, when the saints, oh, when the saints.
See, I think some people at this point, maybe they're not used to irrefutable, are saying these two are just being downright disrespectful. I'm being completely
But
honest.
the name of the editions are they are called Irrespective, so they should have gotten a hint.
If we truly believe that when a brother or sister dies, he or she goes home, why are we saddened?
Well, it's true. It's a good point.
And here's the point: some of these people, they never met John MacArthur.
Correct.
They don't know anything about John MacArthur except what some other preachers were quoting about him.
Correct.
And all of a sudden, they're devastated.
Correct.
And it's been like that throughout at least modern history of the church, where you were alluding to this. Their pastor is right there, right in front of them, alive, kicking and helping them. And they could care less if he dies or not. Furthermore, they're helping to accelerate his death,
His untimely
and his
demise.
passing. And then when their local pastor passes, they go, "This is the time to celebrate."
That's right. No,
MacArthur
they literally
dies.
dance on his grave while they're playing "Oh, when the Saints."
MacArthur dies. I'm devastated. What? Our pastor passed. And when the saints.
Oh, when the Saints. It's true.
Sorry.
That happens. Well, if you've been living under a rock, which we presume that some of you have and some of you have not.
I've had to live under a rock when we first got to this country.
You'll know that over the weekend, usually the way that this works with the news media is that on the weekends, they call them slower news days. Why? Everybody's not necessarily paying attention to
And
what's
Friday
happening.
is dump day.
Right.
Not about
because-
going to the bathroom. This is when they dump the news that they think people won't be paying attention. So let's go ahead and get these bills out there and these pieces of news, etc.
I thought you were going to say pieces of something else, but we'll leave that for another
No,
instance.
because it's not about human debris and waste.
Right. So to your point, the politicians and things that they did, Trump tried to do the same thing, which we'll have something to say about him in this edition, by the way. They tried to do the same thing with respect to the refusal to release the
Or
information.
asking us to forget.
Well, no, and calling people that are demanding this things that his surrogates and himself were promising stupid and that
And
he
we-
doesn't want to support it anymore, et cetera, et cetera. We'll have
Hey,
something
he
to say
called-
about that.
He called you supporters all week.
Exactly.
And you
And
should
he
forget-
defines MAGA.
Yeah,
Remember.
and you have to forget about Epstein, even though he refuses to forget 2020.
Wait a minute. Russia. 51 intelligence agents.
We digress.
Right. The Hunter Biden laptop story, all that stuff. Anyways, so on the weekend, usually people are focused on other matters. Whatever they're going to do on the weekend, a barbecue, going to the beach, going to church on Sunday, et cetera, et cetera.
Maybe even be devastated because.
John MacArthur passed, correct?
Exactly.
So what ends
What are
up...
your plans? I'm going to be devastated. Sorry, I
And
keep
I'm,
interrupting you,
and I'm going to make it
but
sure.
I'm predestined to do that.
Well, the thing is that they had planned to be devastated so they could post something on social media and get a lot of likes.
Okay,
So you see, there's a
so
predestination.
devastation brings likes.
Correct.
Okay,
Remember, the world's a stage, and we're
But
just
anyway.
participants in it.
on with the topic.
I don't know who said that, but someone said it, and we're just repeating it. Anyways, if you were sitting under a rock somewhere, the Magnolia brand, that's the brand of Chip and Joanna Gaines, this, some would call them a power couple. I don't know what use that name is for these people, but they're a pretty popular husband-wife duo because of their days on HGTV, Home and Garden.
Fixer-uppers.
Right, fixer-upper.
Which, by the way, everything was known ahead of time, but they made you believe that they took the people out shopping for houses and they finally found one. And here comes the renovation. Everything was set beforehand, and they led you to believe that they went house shopping, and this one is the one we're going to flip, not flip, but have a makeover, or apply a makeover to that. And then you said, "Ooh, tremendous!"
Scripted television.
What? Yes, what a great choice of colors. It was gray after gray after gray.
Everything that Joanna Gaines touches,
It's gray
it's shiplap and gray.
with a barn door.
Exactly, with the barn door here or there and a couple of plants. By the way, folks, the reason they became so popular was more specifically amongst evangelical Christians because they proclaimed themselves to be Christ-loving figures whom were not about to relent on gospel matters over the culture war, and that won them not only a lot of publicity but a lot of followers.
Especially when they were somewhat persecuted because
Right.
of their faith,
Correct.
but supposedly they held on and they did the right thing. And Onward Christian Soldier is the name of the, I believe, of the hymn.
Let's be honest. Home and Garden Television has been known for some time now to be known as Home and Gay Television because that channel, that network, has been at the forefront of that culture war to try to peddle the idea that homosexuals are just your average neighbor that you have to accept the way that they live and even endorse everything there. Look, they're your local designers who absolutely love colors for whatever
And they
reason.
bring in modern couples,
Correct.
which includes
Homosexuals.
two homosexuals, two men, two women, and they cater to them.
Fast forward to 2025.
Fast forward.
If I'm not mistaken, they no longer do any shows for HGTV, but now they have their
They have
own
brand,
network,
yeah.
Magnolia.
Magnolia.
But HBO Max hires them to do a new show for HBO Max under the Magnolia brand titled Back to the Frontier. By the way, I have to let the audience know, in doing my research for this episode, I had to make sure
Is that when
that-
the Indians were scalping gays?
and the Cowboys were
Okay.
shooting.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
six-shooters
figure
in the
out how
frontier.
far back they're taking it.
Right. The entire concept of the show is that supposedly take couples from modernity, you have them abandon their comfort and convenience with modern lifestyles, including technology and whatnot, and they're supposed to live as people in the frontier days, back toward the
Always
westward
with the
expansion.
hope that after 8 weeks this will be done with.
Exactly.
It's-
Exactly.
The people way back then, they had no hope of after 8 weeks we're done with this. They were stuck there. But these
Correct.
people after 8 weeks,
They're done
and
with it.
I suppose some handsome compensation for it.
Right.
They were done with it.
Correct. So what ends up happening, folks? The public, especially the admiring public, whom are Christians of Joanna Gaines and her Gray and Shiplap and Barn Doors, found out that one of the contestants in the show are two homosexual activists with two children that they say that they have adopted. Now, let us clarify. We don't believe there is such a thing as homosexual marriage. It's a euphemism. We don't believe that homosexuals should adopt that. I'm going to speak personally now. I think that's child abuse. The fact of the matter is that people got angry over this display. And Chip Gaines decided to have a message for Christians that were criticizing him and his wife over the decision on Sunday. Let us share some things with the audience here. Let me share the screen here. You'll notice that on the okay, hold on. Let me make sure that we're also appearing on screen here. Hi, everybody. New digs here. You'll notice that on the screen that we are sharing with the audience is this homosexual couple on the show. Take a listen to this. Notice how they're normalizing sodomy. Dallas-based dads. More on them in a second. Should get rid of those two guys. Did you hear? 10-year-old boys. 10-year-old boys. And the show presents them as just your run-of-the-mill couple. Take a listen to this. We were able to extract this originally from the account Terry Green. I don't know who she is. I have to give the demarcation here. But nevertheless, they were able to pull this because it's very interesting, their past. Their past is very interesting. Take a listen to this.
How did you hear about this opportunity? Who was more invested from the jump? Who took more convincing? I want to know that.
They chose.
They chose.
They chose.
It's there. The guy admits it. Here's always the same propaganda with your neighbors and your coworkers. So, by the contestants' own words, they are achieving what they've been looking to advance, which is the normalization of sodomy.
The X people want some sound, you.
The can't hear any sound from X. Let me make sure I fix this. Let's see. Just give me a second here. Make sure that I. Doesn't seem. I have to. It seems like I have to.
Could be Musk.
Hold on. Just give me a
Voice
second,
audience.
folks.
It could be Elon.
Could be Elon. Let me play this again, folks. Thanks for letting us know. Tell me if you can hear this now. I guess we're going to have to check that for the next edition, but thanks for letting us know. We'll check that connection. Anyways, it's just to let you know that these people, they're activists. There's other information that have come forth about these two, that these two were on the so-called front lines of being the faces of being so-called recognized for their homosexual marriage years ago. So it gives you an indication of whom they are using here. Now, this is what I wanted to get to before we continue.
But I think the point needs to be stressed that the Gaines chose them. According to
Yes.
them, according to
Yes.
these homosexuals, the Gaines were looking for this type of a couple, and the Gaines chose them.
Yes. This is Chip Gaines's own words on X this past Sunday. I bookmarked it on my account just to make sure that he wouldn't erase it from then on. And obviously, he is not he's not moved on from this. Notice the numbers: 6.4 million views. Listen, talk, ask questions, listen, maybe even learn. Too much to ask of modern American Christian culture. Judge first, understand later, never. It's a sad Sunday when non-believers have never been confronted with hate or vitriol until they are introduced to a modern American Christian. And then he puts the broken heart emoji. Now, I'd like to spend some time on this because
So it's the modern American Christian that has a problem, according to Gaines, with homosexuality, not the previous generations of Christians who have all denounced the homosexual lifestyle. It's just the modern. That's how ignorant he is.
right.
Obviously, it's the modern Christians that have a problem with this.
Couple of things that I'd like to point out from this thread. Talk, ask questions, listen. Notice that the implication here is that before arriving at certain conclusions, Christians need to interact with certain persons that are contrary to their beliefs, their viewpoints, before they arrive at certain determinations.
So what makes him believe that I have not arrived at what I have arrived? Because I have gone through the process of examining, thinking, analyzing, weighing things out. He is being judgmental, even though he criticizes
Correct.
us of being critical and harsh and all that.
Correct. But here's the thing. If the Bible, among its commandments, among the things that it teaches Christians, is that sodomy, among other sexual sins, are things that keep you from heaven, you forfeit, as it were, that opportunity. If you continue to insist in that sin and practicing that sin, you insist on that, you're not going to heaven. The most loving thing, and we've talked about this before, that a Christian can do to a sinner, doesn't matter of what stripe they are, what they're practicing, is Jesus loves you. You need to repent, turn your life around. You need to believe on Christ for your salvation. Now, some of you will say, well, Gio, but a lot of this also has to be with the process. I understand that, but the Bible still includes in its presentation of the gospel to repent. We see this early on in Jesus' ministry, and we also see this early on in the book of Acts when the church, as it were, gets its start. You can't eliminate that. But there again, that's part of my commentary. There's a soft spot in evangelicalism, and has been for a few decades, with respect to using the same language that the Bible tells us to use to communicate this, because we don't want to be seen as dislikable figures. We don't want to be criticized by sinners. These are things that move, as it were, those motives to alter the biblical message, because we're more concerned about what people would think of us than we are about being faithful to what Christ has commanded us to communicate. And it seems to me very clearly that Chip Gaines is actually of that very same spirit. So to your point, he turns his ire and his criticism and his unjust criticism toward believers that pointed out that him and his wife, including this couple, so-called, air quotes, in their episode is actually promoting the very thing that they say that they stood against years ago. He's actually defending sodomy over and against biblical principles, against what God has told us.
Again, once I have gone through the process of considering this, that, the other thing, I don't have to go through the process again just because he says you're not thinking things through. He's actually trying to convince me about something. And when I refuse to be convinced, not because I don't have, what do they call it today, an open mind, but because with an open mind, I approached the subject matter, I analyzed it, I examined it, and I said, this is where I'm going to stand on this because this is what the Bible teaches me. He calls this being stubborn, not being open-minded, being harsh, critical, etc. No, I'm just standing on what I have learned. My examinations, my analysis takes me here. And now you want me to, under the same pressure that you wouldn't want your family to be under, you want us to bow to you and to your opinions so that we will embrace it. But I am going to open a small subtopic here because I believe it needs to be dealt with. This problem that we are tackling takes place because Christians take these public figures and they almost worship them.
Right.
And they hang on their every words and their actions and they become idols. And so when you think of the list of people, at least in this country, that we have looked to them, and by we I mean believers, not me personally, and said they're Christians, and then they're defrauded after all the embrace, the heavy duty embrace they have with the world comes to the forefront. All of a sudden, boy, what a deception! Ronald Reagan, as it turned out, wasn't a Christian after all. And Steve Harvey says there must be a lot of ways to get to heaven, and I thought he was a Christian. And Tom Hanks, now I find out that he was a Catholic and also a Mormon, and so on and so forth. So when we find out what they are truly about, then we feel let down.
Right.
Why did you lift them to these places of importance where their opinions and their doings matter? You shouldn't do that.
Very well said. By the way, if you want to interact with us on this topic, please drop your chat, drop your question in the space that YouTube and Rumble offer for the interacting with us. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this content. You are the best way to help us to spread the word about what we are attempting to do here, whether on Rumble, whether on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't done so, hit the notification bell on YouTube, and also share the content. And don't forget to donate. It helps us to continue to put out this content where, as you notice, we have no sponsors, we have no advertisers, we're not beholden to any of them. We do not, as it were, muzzle ourselves. We're going to tell you the way that we see things. It's why we titled these episodes Irrespective. Now, another thing that I need to bring forth, which is important, hearkening back to Gaines's tweet here. Notice that in essence, he's attempting to get Christians to override the simple understanding of the biblical commandments over these things. Again, talk, ask questions, listen, maybe even learn. What are we supposed to learn from these people whom are admittedly sodomites, and that their language for years has been one where they've attempted to cow Christians, intimidate them in many instances, mock them. They use every single tactic in the book in order to normalize their devious and their sexual behavior.
So has he applied these questions to the Bible? Listen to the Bible, talk with the Bible, etc. No.
The benefit of the doubt goes.
I am supposed to listen to these people who have an agenda. They're trying to convince me about something, and then I should arrive at a conclusion. So what's my starting point? What these people are telling me or what the Bible is telling me?
What are we supposed to understand from these persons? Because think about it, the implication is, what are we supposed to understand? That makes, are they going to say something to me that suddenly is going to make me sympathize with what they're attempting to normalize? It's not going to happen. He ends by saying, it's a sad Sunday when non-believers have never been confronted with hate or vitriol. Now he's calling Christians whom oppose the normalization of sodomy haters and vitriolic. Furthermore, they are introduced to a modern American Christian, and it says heartbroken. Folks, we're looking here, as I said earlier, as a microcosm of typical American evangelical Christianity, where it's very flaccid, it's very weak on standing upon the simple principles of the plain things that the Bible teaches us, especially with things such as sexual ethics. Why? Because it's more important for American Christians to be liked, to have to have people have good opinions about us than it is to submitting, as it were, to God's word.
So at one point or another, perhaps the Gaines, I know many others have, they make a choice. Is it my career? Is it the ratings? Is it the money that we are raking in? Or is it my faith?
Right.
We know from reading the Bible that if you decide to follow Jesus, persecution is going to come your way, and it'll come in different manifestations and forms. And one of the ways that it has come across is that people that desire to be in the entertainment industry, they know they get blacklisted, they get pushed out of Hollywood. Some people believe that they can make the difference, be the difference, and stick it out to the point where they can be bold about their faith and stay in Hollywood. Well, if that is true, and I believe it is for some people that are in the industry, we celebrate that. We applaud that. We don't quite understand why they would want to be part of an industry. They say it's to influence it towards a good thing. But even though we don't fully understand it or embrace it, they stand firm. But when you go wishy washy, when you don't stand firm, when you start taking what should be your biblical convictions and then tell others who are biblically convicted, hey, move away from your convictions, listen to these people and follow them and follow us who have moved away from what we thought were convictions, but we were in error. Now we have issues with that.
Correct. Let me share the screen once again with the audience, because there's something else that I want the audience to note. And just give me a second here, make sure that I am sharing the proper thing here. Give me 1 second here. Let's see. For whatever reason, it's not popping up again. Let's see. Just give me 1 second. Hopefully it'll work. Please work. For whatever reason, now this isn't working. I wanted to be able to show it to the audience. Anyways, just for the sake of the audience, so they can find everything that I'm mentioning here, or I'm about to mention, I would ask you to visit Megan Basham's X account. Fantastic reporter. Certain things that, she'll put a lot of her personal views on X. Some of them I don't agree with personally. Nevertheless, putting that disclaimer aside, she does some fantastic work. If you've ever read the book Shepherds for Sale, you know what I'm talking about. She discovered, much to her own chagrin, because by her own admission, she likes a lot of what Joanna Gaines has done throughout the years, that, and this is her quote from an X post as of July 13th, so 3 days ago. So after hearing from multiple sources that Chip Gaines and Joanna Gaines have close professional and personal ties to a strange polyamory arrangement in which a husband and father brought another man into the home and they are now together while the wife remains to raise the 4 children, is true. Did you hear that? The man in question is Billy Jack Bronner, Magnolia photographer and art director. I'm adding the art director because she places a lot of the links to things that have appeared on the web and in print where he is classified as the art director. I am told that the Gaineses did not rebuke this situation, but instead have affirmed Billy Jack in his choices. The rot in Waco goes a lot deeper than I suspected, and she places a few other photos of this individual extolling his full-blown sexual deviancy. And in the Instagram posts that she screenshots and repurposes for the audience to see, Joanna Gaines is at the forefront saying she loves those posts where she demonstrates, or this guy is demonstrating the gay partner that he's with and the so-called children that they have adopted.
And the wife.
And the wife,
Who
correct.
happens to be the mom, and she's part of a 3-way.
Correct.
So it's a marital menage a trois.
Correct.
And we are supposed to listen to that and remain silent, because this is the way modern society is constructed, and this is part of the modern marriage, the modern home. And we as Christians, unless we understand that, and by understanding that they mean you have to receive it and endorse it, then we are almost like animals, because we choose to criticize. We don't pay attention, we don't learn, we don't ask questions. We are almost like animals because we criticize. I'll go back to my original statement one more time. Once I have done an analysis and examination of the situation, whatever it is, in this case, homosexual marriage, and I see what the Bible clearly tells me, I as a Christian have the responsibility to go with what the Bible teaches, what the Bible shows me. Now, they can say, we've also been to the Bible and we disagree with you. Fine. Then you continue to say what you say, but don't tell me that I am almost animal-like because I disagree with you and I denounce what you are doing.
Correct.
At one point or another, the Gaines need to understand that the Christian community was behind them when they were being persecuted by who? The homosexual community.
Yep.
It was a situation that was boiling up, and people came to the rescue in the form of prayers and supports and wishing them well, etc. So this has gotten around even to the point that Samaritan Purse,
Oh, Franklin Graham, he denounced them. Yes,
exactly.
he did. One last thing, folks, and I'd like to reemphasize this. You said it earlier, but it's a very important point. This is the problem with Christian celebrity culture in and of itself.
Yes.
I remember years ago that I received criticism because I had published a blog post where I told Christians, be very wary of this whitewashing of Kanye West. I remember he had put out an album, and I heard the album. I know many other people like the album, and we said, it's a good thing that these sorts of lyrics, as it were, are going out there to the mass public because people need to hear the gospel. However, I said, I have this suspicion, it is not going to be fleeting, that the reason Christians are celebrating is because they see that another massive celebrity now proclaiming Christ validates their faith. And we have said before throughout the years that celebrities don't validate our faith. It doesn't matter what anybody says about Christ, about the truth, about his word. We put our stock and trade, as it were, our dependency on Christ because he said so. That is what faith in Christ is all about. Not because some celebrity tells me or some other public personality or famous preacher tells me about Christ. It's about believing Christ because he said what he said, because he is God and he delivers the goods, as it were. Well, some people criticized me saying, you are nothing but a Debbie Downer. How is it possible that this can be such a great thing for the advancement of the gospel and you are now criticizing this? And I said, obviously you didn't get the message. What I'm saying is that, and obviously those that were criticizing me for that, I must have hit an open wound. And that's why they necessarily tried to move the goalpost, misrepresenting my argument. Well, the same thing that happened during Kanye has happened necessarily with the Gaineses. So many people, Christians, put their stock, as it were, their dependency on the Gaineses are Christians, so Christianity has to be true. Now they pull this off. I actually think this is more detrimental with that celebrity Christian culture in place, because now you know how many people are going to see this situation and blaspheme, as it were, the way as the Bible warns of this sort of chicanery going on.
So I think we need to go back to the Kanye West situation. Supposedly he turned to Christ. Obviously he got tired of it, or perhaps he thinks that he can mix other things, including pornography.
Right.
To the point where Mike Moss, a veteran in the adult film industry, currently manages production at Vixen Media Group, he claims he is negotiating to join Yeezy Porn.
Well, Yeezy is his stage name now, or Ye is his stage name.
And then he says, regardless of the outcome, he firmly believes that Kanye West has the potential to revolutionize the porn industry.
That last album that supposedly he's ready to release, he did a pre-release to the public, and one of the songs had been banned on most of these streaming platforms. But in one of the lyrics, he actually says, and content warning with what I'm about to say, I'm only going to give you a sanitized version of what he puts out, but it's still rather disturbing. He says he has no problems seeing other men sleeping with his wife. Those are part of the lyrics. And then he had gone around, my understanding is he had gone around the different shows lately promoting one of the other songs in the album where it says that up until the age of 14, he and a male cousin of his had been engaging in sexual relations.
So he's a believer. We're supposed to believe that and follow his ideas. And Justin Bieber, another believer that perhaps has great ideas, and we should be following his ideas. And now the Gaines, and so on and so forth. I think most of you get the picture. What I believe most people don't get is the battle for your mind,
Right.
the battle for your soul via what? Arguments. Philadelphia Freedom, that film with the score, the music behind it.
Oh, Tom Hanks, right? Yeah.
The young man who was brought up as a Catholic.
Yep.
And as a Mormon, and he was a Bible thumping youth, and he made the move to the Greek Orthodox Church, and he still goes to church every week, and so on and so forth. So there's a battle for your mind. And these people know that if celebrities, popular people talk to you, there's a possibility that you will say, perhaps the Bible, not that it's wrong, but my pastor and the other people that are teaching me the Bible, they're wrong, and these people are right. That's what they're banking on, that their popularity will bypass whatever filters you may or may not have running, and they'll get these ideas and thoughts into your soul.
Exactly. Now, to end, we had said that we wanted to mention something that is on everybody's mind at this point, and it is the debacle that this administration has now over the non-releasing of the Epstein files. Just a quick summary so we can end. Remember, originally, Bondi, I have the files on my desk. She calls over the influencers. According to their testimony, they didn't know
I
that
have
they were
the
going to.
list.
I have the list, correct. I have the
I have
list.
the list.
And it's on my desk. I have to review it. It's going to be published. They gave those binders called Epstein File Release Phase 1 to these influencers that are pretty popular in MAGA and whatnot. And now, just a few days ago, we get a memorandum from the FBI, from the Department of Justice, that says there is no client list. Epstein killed himself in his jail cell. And if you've been following the news cycle, you know that there's been just a bunch of prevarication from the administration, a lot of stonewalling. The thing that is most bothering people, and rightfully so, has been Trump's messaging on the matter for some time. It's been a few days. First, when he was in that roundtable meeting that he wanted to televise, are people still talking about the Epstein release files? I can't believe it. This guy, he's long gone. And that's a desecration. Wait a minute. It's not about Epstein per se. It's about Americans finally wanting those in power, the elites, to suffer the consequences of their misdeeds and be brought to justice. That's what this is all about. And Trump and his surrogates, certainly on the campaign trail, they ran on being fully transparent. This, what we've gotten up until this point, is full transparency. And it seems like my share screen is suddenly working again. Take a look at this, folks. This is what he posted on Truth Social not too long ago. What's going on with my boys, and in some cases gals? They're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, et cetera, and it's long. I'm not going to read the whole thing. The latest thing that he released was he said that now he doesn't want any support whatsoever from the stupid people whom continue to make this an issue, because he's saying that the Epstein files matter is nothing more than a Democrat hoax alongside the Russia investigation, the Hunter Biden story that they successfully suppressed, et cetera. And he says that anybody that continues to bring this up to damage, as it were, the successes that he's had as a president, as an administration, he doesn't want their support anymore, and they're downright stupid.
So he's asking us to forget.
Right.
This is the same guy that reminds us constantly that we can never forget 2020, the elections.
Correct.
And so you go like, is he crazy? Is he losing his marbles? That would be two presidents back to back who have lost their marbles. They're in the presidency. No, I just think Trump is very astute. And he's banking on the following, just like all the other people that are famous. He's thinking most conservatives don't want to go to the Democrat Party under any circumstance. So I'll say what I please, I'll do what I please, and they're stuck with me because they have no other choices. The Hill was quoting an interview with Alan Dershowitz. In case you didn't know, he represented Epstein.
Well, and there are various photos, and there's testimony, evidence that he received massages from so-called Epstein's girls, et cetera, et cetera.
So now he's saying that you can't blame Trump, you can't blame Bondi or the FBI, because it's a couple of judges that are holding up all the information. And so therefore, Trump and Bondi have done the best they can do for now until that information is released. But he did say, since he represented Epstein, he knows what the names are. It's not necessarily a list, but I know the names of the people that accused Epstein of sexual deviancy and sexual harassment, etc. And he says some of them were in power, but they are no longer in power. And nobody that is actually in power is on any of these accusations.
And what does it matter if they're in power or not? Because I thought, and I hear politicians of all stripes quoting this phrase over and over again, no one is above the law.
So if these people were in power, how come we didn't get the information immediately? Because what this tells me is that people in power now, God knows what they're doing, and we don't know about it.
Right.
Because the Jeffrey Epstein that is running the current scam, whatever that happens to be, we still don't know about it. So this is the way they cover for each other when it's convenient. And at the end of the day, I'll go back and I'll finish with this to a point that I made earlier. When you exalt these people, whether it's Trump, the Gaines, Justin Bieber, President Reagan, whoever you decide to exalt, because they're famous, they're popular, and they seem to talk the talk and walk the walk. At the end, you will be hurt because you leaned on them, you trusted them, and you should know by now, my fellow brother and sister in Christ, you should lean on Christ and trust Christ.
This is my final point on the matter. I wonder what Corey Comparatoria's wife, his widow, and his family are thinking about all of this, because let's suppose, I don't know this for sure. I need to
So
disclaim that.
where's the information on all of that on Butler?
But I'm glad you mentioned that also. Why? Because there are people that lost relationships with their family over campaigning for Trump. There are people whom lost their jobs because they came out and supported Trump. There are people who lost a lot of money and opportunity and reputation. Their reputations were damaged because they supported Trump publicly.
Mike Lindell,
Right,
Mike
exactly.
Pillow, etc.
But then when it gets inconvenient for Trump, because Trump is all about himself and only about himself, he doesn't quite seem to understand that he's nothing more than a vehicle for those who want America ascendant once again. He thinks that the movement MAGA, which he says is his, is something that he can toy with and manipulate. The problem he's finding, and the reason that he did this temper tantrum, is exactly this. He thinks that he can continue to manipulate. Remember what he said years ago? I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue in New York and I'll still won't lose support. He thinks that he can still somehow do that, that he will continue to wag the dog and people will follow him as it is. No, this is a thing that people want, accountability, and now they're not letting him go, and he's bothered by it. So if these are his terms are more than acceptable. We have no problem with that. Why? Because at the end of the day, we're not a follower of his. We're not a follower of Kanye. We're not a follower of the Gaineses. We're followers of Christ. And at the end of the day, Jesus tells us that what has to reign supreme, no matter what the cost, has to be the truth. This is only making things worse for him, because it makes it seem like he's complicit in a cover-up when, up until this point, he had been talking about absolute transparency on the matter, and he is violating that. Additionally, as I said, this continues to slap people in the face. It's an insult to the people who put everything on the line for this man to win the presidency, only for him to say, you're a moron, you're retarded, you shouldn't be demanding this, even though they had been dangling carrots to the supporters up until this point. It is a contradiction, and I'm glad that he is getting raked over the coals over the matter, because he is not infallible.
He's losing his grip, because even though it was gingerly said, the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate are saying we need transparency on this. Even the front runner, supposedly to be the next governor of Florida, is saying we need transparency on this.
There you have it, folks. That's all for this edition of Irrespective. We hope that you'll join us for the next edition, which will be on Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll return to our Sunday format of a Bible study. We will announce on Telegram, on X, what we will be talking about. If you have not yet subscribed to the outlets that we use to communicate with you, please do so. Our links, all of the links are in the description box underneath the video player. On X, we are on Telegram, we're on different places. Please subscribe. Again, if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube and Rumble pages, we would encourage you to do so. On YouTube, make sure to click also on the notification bell and share the content on both Rumble and YouTube. Last but not least, donate. It helps us to continue to put out this content for your edification. The links for everything I've just mentioned are beneath the video player. That's all for now. We're going to sign off until, once again, Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the next edition of Irrespective. For Jesus, this has been Gio. Until the next occasion that we gather, may the Lord shine his face upon you.